It's Wednesday, June the 15th. Lake level is about 916 and a half. It's come down about 6 inches or so. Water temperatures really come up. It's probably 83 degrees this morning. Depends where you're at on the lake. It's getting up as high as 87, 88. You know, some places by this weekend you probably see some 90-degree surface temperature. Now, a lot of the fish seem to make a big move in the last week or so. A lot of the fish were starting to move out deep, and it seems like, from about this week, probably about last Friday or so on, there was really a big move, especially with the Kentuckies out there deep. You catch a lot of them out there on drop shots. There's still a lot of fish to be caught shallow. The upper river arms will produce throughout the summer. If you get up there shallow enough where there's some current. Like I say, a week and a half ago, I was up there catching them on a square bill and flipping a beaver and a jig real good. Now, that'll kind of stay pretty much throughout the summer. But the shallow bite down lake seems to be getting less and less every day. We're still catching some on a little 3/16 ounce fish head with a single tail grub or a Kitech 2.8 Kitech swim bait. It seems like I catch a couple keepers early on that, and I'm catching a few on top water over some submerged timber early, but for the most part, most of my bite's been out there deeper. Now, if you want to key in on Kentuckies, and it's working throughout the lake, I think probably the White River is a little bit better, but same thing's going on down around the dam, around Kimbling City and the mid-James. You want to look for these long, flat gravel points, especially if you can find one that's got a channel or a creek that comes up alongside of it. The fish have been anywhere from 28 feet to some of them as deep as 45 feet. Now, you'll get out on these long, flat gravel points, and if you'll get on some of them points that got the conservation brush piles on them, those are the points that you want to try to key on. There's some fish not necessarily in the brush, but around the brush. And like I say, they're anywhere from 28 to 40 feet deep. A lot of times, if you get out there on a flat and you don't see any fish, spend a little time out there fishing, because some of them have been sucked so tight to bottom that you can't pick them up with the fish finder. So what I'm doing in that case is I'll drop the bait down to the bottom and reel up about a crank or two and just work the bait off the bottom. And what I'm rigging up is just a standard old drop shot. I put a swivel up about 16 inches or so to a foot. Put my 1/0 Gamakatsu drop shot hook, and then I'm using a 3/16 ounce to a 1/4 ounce weight. And the colors of worms I'm throwing, I pretty much just stay with 2 colors. There's a bunch of different colors they'll bite. This is a Chompers brown and purple lamb. Chompers plum will work. I got a buddy that hand pours me some of these plum right here. But Zoom also makes some good drop shot worms. Here's one here that Zoom makes in the same color. I don't think it matters what brand of bait it is, as long as it's about a 3.5 to 4.5 inch bait. And here's some that my guy hand pours to me. Watermelon candy, like a Zoom finesse worm will work. Like I say, it's just whatever you get, mainly get the confidence in. But I've been dropping this down to the bottom, like I say, and just working it up, getting it up a couple feet off bottom. The bite is super, super subtle. You won't even hardly, it'll just be like a little bit of a pressure bite, or your line will go slack. But normally, once you catch one fish, you'll catch several fish in an area. And if you'll notice on your fish finder, once you get one hook, the bottom kind of lights up. There'll be several fish, working around there. But like I say, sometimes you got to spend a little bit of time out on the flats, on the trolling motor, roaming around till you see either a piece of brush or what looks like a little stump. A lot of times that'll be a fish just hooked to the bottom. And a lot of these fish are getting pretty aggressive, because when you drop the drop shot down, when it gets down to about 20 feet or so, you'll see the fish shoot up off the bottom to come to it. Another way we're catching them on drop shot is on bluff ends and over deep trees. Now, those fish are a little bit easier to see, and the bottom depth kind of varies. You might be anywhere from 50 to 100 foot, but you're kind of looking for the tops of the trees to come up anywhere from 25 to 40 feet. You want to get that drop shot down just above them treetops, and depends on what kind of electronics you have, but with the Lowrance we can see the fish in the trees, and you can see them kind of move up out of the tree to come for the bait. Now those ones are a little bit easier to see, and I have been catching some largemouth out there as well. We've been catching a ton of fish out there. Now, especially with, this weekend we got the Teen Anglers Championship, to be like anywhere from 180 to 200 high school kids out there fishing. And this is a good technique for them. It's probably not going to win a tournament, but you can definitely catch, 5 keepers on it. We've been catching a lot of keepers throughout the day. It's just something you got to grind away at. But, most of the fish have been, 2 1/4 pounders, the keepers. But what I do a lot of times, if you don't have electronics good enough to see your bait, I take a Sharpie and I'll drop my bait down. I'll take the boat out 25, 30 foot of water, drop the bait down, find out where bottom is. Then I'll take a black Sharpie and mark about 2 foot of the line. Then when that's on the reel, I use clear line so I can see that mark. And you can see that black mark on the reel, so you know how far to drop down instead of counting all the time. It really works out pretty good. Even where I can see my bait, most of the time I still mark my line, because if I get out there milling around, the bait gets behind the boat, I still know where my bait is. So if the fish are higher, I can reel it up a couple cranks. If I need to drop down 5 or 6 feet, I can put the black mark at the end of the rod, to get down there. Now, that's not the only bite that's going on as well. I'm starting to get bit pretty good on a football jig. And what I've been throwing there is a 5/8 ounce or 3/4 ounce. A couple colors that seem to be working the best is a green pumpkin orange and a magic craw. Now, this one I have got tipped with a rage craw. Now, a pocket chunk will work. I'm using a lot of different trailers. I'm using like a Zoom Speed Craw will work as your trailer. This is a Strike King Rage, that'll work. And I've been setting the boat about 25 to 30 feet. Been trying to fish the jig anywhere from 15 to 22 feet deep. Now there again, if you can find some brush or some of the conservation brush piles in that depth, you'll find some fish in them. Most of the fish I'm catching on the football jig out of those brush piles have been largemouths. We had a couple in the 3.5 pound range today. I'm not catching any big ones, but I'm catching, several keepers where a lot of the football jig fish will outweigh my Kentuckies. It's a little bit easier to catch the numbers of Kentuckies. You won't catch the numbers of largemouths on the football jig like you will the Kentuckies on the drop shot rig. But a little bit better quality in the brush piles. Another thing that's working real good is a 3/4 ounce white spoon, whether it's a pig sticker spoon, a War Eagle. To me, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it matters to the fish. White or chrome. And we're flipping it in these deep docks, anywhere from 30 to 50 foot. The docks that got 30 to 50 foot of water, flipping it around the boats and the boat lifts, especially once that sun gets up. Them fish are relating to the shade underneath the boats and the docks. And you can also take a drop shot on some of them same docks, work the shaded side of the dock, out in front of the dock where the cables are. Them cables usually build up algae on them down to about 30 feet. The bait fish will hang around them. You can take that drop shot out there and fish out there as well. So there's, quite a variety of ways to catch fish. I would still have a topwater bait handy. There's still some fish coming up throughout the day. Something you can throw. I like to use a Strike King Sexy Dog or a Zara Spook, something I can throw a long ways. But this time of year, they're apt to come up surfacing in the middle of the day, and they have been doing it a little bit in the morning. But it hadn't been real consistent as far as going to a certain spot to try to pull fish up on top. You have to be kind of lucky to be at the right place at the right time, I think, for the topwater bite. Now, if it clouds up, that might be a completely different story. With as hot as it's been, we get some clouds coming in, a little bit of rain. I would look for some bluff ends where you can set the boat 30, 40 feet of water, cast to about 15 or 20 over some submerged timber, and you might be able to pull some topwater fish up on a jointed redfin. But Other than that, fishing's good, and the fish right now, deep fish are kind of scattered out. But as the water gets a little hotter and the lake gets a good thermocline, you'll see the fish, kind of get up around that thermocline, which is normally, depending where you're at, anywhere from 25, 35 feet. Right now, I don't think a lot of the lake has got a good thermocline yet, so some of them fish are as deep as 50, 60 foot. And we can see them when we're fishing 30 foot deep. We'll see them coming up off the bottom. But I think another week or so we'll get a good thermocline that should pull that oxygen level in that thermocline area where the majority of the fish should hang out, so it should group them up a little bit better. If you're going to be out there fishing, make sure you drink plenty of fluids, mainly water, because as hot as it's been and as hot as it's going to be for the next week or so, it's pretty easy to get dehydrated. And I'd like to wish good luck to all the high school kids in their championship this weekend. Till next week, good luck, good fishing.